The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Wasim Al-Sindi from OX Salon,
Hey, everybody.
Josh Shigala from the Standard.io,
Cheers, good morning.
Victoria Jones from Satoshi's Page,
Hello, everybody. It's good evening over here from me.
and I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue 1, the price. The price of Bitcoin is down to $83,925. Meanwhile, the Dow Jones Industrial Average has collapsed to 38,314, down from a recent high of 42,000 or 44,000 if you go back a little more to 18th of February. Issue 1, President Trump's mindless tariffs will cause economic havoc, but the rest of the world can limit the damage. Here we see President Trump cutting the United States out of the fabric. Other cartoons have shown him cutting off the world of the balloon and setting the America free as he raised tariffs randomly on many countries that have top-level domain names. Wasim Al-Sindi, what do you think of Trump's tariffs and the wreckage they're having to the economy, the stock market, and especially the crypto market?
Well, I mean, today, the world we live in is one of like highly interconnected, interdependent supply chains of stuff that get manufactured in different places with materials from all over the place, that gets distributed all over the place. And so by doing this kind of like throttling and bottlenecking with the blunt force instrument of tariffs is not only going to, continue to cause the sort of shocks we're seeing in the markets now, but it's also going to cause all these other kinds of second order kind of knock-on effects. They're a bit harder to foresee. But one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting just to bring up, and I'm sure everyone else has got like more informed thoughts from following the news closer than I have, but the word tariff. Let's do a bit of etymology. Look at the history of the word tariff, and I've got like etymology online open in front of my computer. I'm going to read it to you. It's very short. Arithmetical table, also official list or table of customs duties on goods for import or export, from the Italian tariffa, and then originally from the medieval Latin tariffa, and then ultimately from the Arabic ta'rif, which comes from the verbal noun, which is the verbal noun from arafa, from to be made known or taught. So the word tariff is itself imported from several different places, remanufactured, and then brought into the modern English vernacular, which I think speaks to the incredible short-sightedness of these blunt reactions.
To be made known, a very interesting word. And it is surprising to find ourselves back here. As a historian, of course, I go back to about 100 years when the United States tried the exact same thing. It was recorded forever in the movie of our childhood, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, when economist Ben Stein asked to improvise a speech for the movie, something that would be boring, that would bore the children to death, says something like the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, which raised tariffs, was supposed to shorten or lengthen. It ended up lengthening the Great Depression. It was all right there in Ferris Bueller. We all could have known. There's only one message in the film. That's it. Josh Shigala, what do you think about the recent tariffs and protectionism for the United States economy?
Well, this is an old playbook of the left, actually. If you look at old videos of Nancy Pelosi, or old videos of even Chuck Schumer, of Bernie Sanders, going on and on about reciprocal tariffs. And I'm not a big fan. I like zero tariffs. Less tax the better. I'm a big fan of zero tariffs, but if another country, and I understand if another country is going to tariff me, my country, then it's only fair to do the same back. And what it looks to me like they call it reciprocal. Sorry, it's very early here. I can't even talk properly, but really they're not even matching the tariffs put onto the US yet. a lot of the tariffs are like 10% flat, and then let's say there's a 67% tariff from China, they'll put it to like 30%. So they're not even matching yet, and it's already having an effect. I think it's a sensible move. The U.S.'s entire industrial base is gone. I don't know, actually. The goal is to get the industrial base back to the US, which is also a kind of it also makes sense on a security front, because as soon as supply chains drop off, if you don't have the production, even the ability, because everyone's forgotten how to, then if there is a war, you just can't make anything. And so you generally want, if you want to protect your nation, you want to have the ability to build things. And it looks like the US is sort of, they don't make any ships anymore. They don't make anything anymore. A lot of it has been shipped off to the rest of the world. And, that's been great for the West, because we've gotten all the cheap stuff, and it's enriched China. It's enriched all these countries. It's brought the middle class up a lot in these developing countries. And that's great too. But eventually you have to say, hey, if you're going to keep tariffing us, we're now suffering as a country, so we've got to match the tariffs, and then hopefully they'll all drop again, because generally what happens, they match, and then they'll both go, hey, why are we doing this? Let's drop it. But what I would like to see is the income tax being dropped lower over time as tariffs take over from that, and let's see if that happens.
Well, spoiler alert, the only tax cuts are going to be for billionaires. They've already launched the package into Congress. They're going to cut Medicaid and cut billionaire taxes. I'm not sure about it, Josh. I think I agree with you. We're going to raise our tariff. They're going to raise their tariff. And then we're going to both look at ourselves and say, what are we doing? We are wrecking trade. We are selling less widgets. People are buying less cars. This makes no sense. It also makes no sense in today's economy when they show you that chart of where the Airbus airplane is made, or how a car gets made. And they're like, well, they get the part from here and the part from here. And even in the American supply chain, the part goes back and forth from Canada like 5 different times as it's connected to the car. And it's just not, our only hope is that it's all posturing, or that they cover and they say that it was all posturing. And I'm fine with either one. You guys can make a mistake and cover for it, as long as they say, oh my goodness, we've killed the entire stock market, we need to change direction. Otherwise,
a lot of it, like
they
Trump's
say we're
playbook, is very leverage based.
Like they're going to go more.
Yeah, if you look at his playbook, it's very leverage based. So to come in with a deal, you need leverage. So you need to come in with something and then take it back, or say, hey, if we don't come to a deal, then we're going to go harder and softer.
But wasn't there a tweet a while ago where when Trump wasn't president, that said if the Dow falls by 1,000 points, the president should be impeached? And like now that's happening, but I don't see Trump calling for his own impeachment.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you pump an entire stock exchange with fake money, and then it drops when that fake money is revealed to be fake and a ghost, you can't keep pump without a little bit of dump. Like it's yin and yang. Life is yin yang. We can't expect forever growth. There has to be a correction, and that's just part of a painful part of healing, is having some pain. When you've broken your leg, you need to heal, and when you step on it or whatever, it hurts. But the pain is the weakness leaving you, and that is that's just a matter of life.
I'm not sure it dropped because of fake money. It seems more like it dropped because they're going to put taxes on goods going.
No, it went high because of fake money.
Wow, it was high because of that, but it was also high because people thought they were going to sell a lot of goods. They thought this was going to be a booming economy and that everyone was on the same page, right? But now, if we're going to raise all these taxes between countries and make it harder to trade, we're going to sell less widgets. China's going to sell less widgets. People are going to have less stuff. It's going to be less good.
I'm not talking the last month. I'm talking the last 20 years of American culture has been remove the industrial base overseas and take it over with debt instead. So use debt instead, cheap credit, cheap money, and farm all of the industrial base overseas. And the problem is when you invent matches, you forget how to make fire. When you have the ability to send all your industrial base overseas, you forget how to make the things. I'm sure 99% of Americans wouldn't know how to, I don't know, build certain things anymore. So there's a whole educational steep learning curve as well to this whole thing to bring industrial base back. It's cool to, I mean, already 280,000 new jobs have been opened up in factories, but who's going to fill them if they don't know how to, they need to be educated.
Yeah, I'm not sure that this is forward progress, Josh. I think we might be going back to sticks and stones and caveman days here. I heard a great example this morning where the guy says, okay, I'm a financial advisor. I make $10,000 an hour giving financial advice. I have a lady press my suit for $100. Should I start learning how to press my suit now? But it makes way more sense for him to give the financial advice to make the $10,000. Like, we're not going to become an industrial country overnight. And if we did, what kind of jobs would they be? Who wants them? We can't even get the Americans to work in the field jobs, let alone the factory jobs, given the cost, no matter what the cost. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the tariffs and the protectionism of the U.S. economy? It's 100 years ago, America first. Yeah.
Yeah, there were lots of things, I think, actually. I mean, I was going to start recycling through my old newsletters to my email list, but I've actually decided to publish one on Bitcoin and free trade because it's actually a really interesting topic. And, in order to do research for this this article, I've started going over Adam Smith's book, Wealth of Nations. And obviously in there, I mean, that was written in the 1700s. And so he talks about tariffs back in the 1700s. And he does point out that, if all of your competitors have put tariffs on your goods, then actually placing tariffs is a reasonable thing to do because you want to get to a situation where you've got free trade, because in a situation of free trade, things will move naturally. It benefits an economy that's producing an excess of stuff to sell it to somebody else. And obviously, once you put it in tariffs, you're going to create extra friction. So the ideal is free trade if you want a smooth economy. But of course, one of the reasons why we've got tariffs anyway is because we've got load of distortions in currencies. So, you start off with currency wars, which then lead to trade wars, which often then lead to kinetic wars. That's how it's happened in history. And so, it's unfortunate really, because if he's raising tariffs to kind of match some of his competitors, maybe that's an appropriate thing to do, but it is kind of raising the conflict. And I think I suspect from what I've seen, part of his strategy is to try and get the other people to back down so that you go back to free trade. But of course, the first thing China's done is up the game and put tariffs up in response. And it's just like, yeah, we were looking for a de-escalation, not a re-escalation. And so the problem is you're in a situation where things are very volatile and very unpredictable. I mean, the finances of the world economy have been messed up for a long time. It's the monetary system's been overinflated, and so in many respects you need a sense of deflation in order to try and bring things back under control. But the trouble is it's so inflated, the moment you try and do that, all hell breaks loose. That's what happened in 1929. So, he's playing a dangerous game. And the problem is if all of his trading partners, rather than de-escalating, decide to re-escalate, it could be devastating on the stock market because, you've got all of these countries raising the taxes on their goods, which essentially is very deflationary. And I know that the Federal Reserve is trying to, keep a lid on inflation, but this may well be an overcorrection that they're not able to respond to in time in order to get control of it. And so, I think anything could happen. It could all be resolved next week and we're back off to the races, or the whole thing this could be the moment that we've all been waiting for, where everything falls apart. So I don't know. I'm on the edge of my seat watching it by the minute. What's it going to do now? Yeah. So really interesting.
There's interesting bull thesis published, I think, yesterday by Arthur Hayes, formerly of BitMEX, about how he foresaw positive feedback here, which would kick in global liquidity once again, and that's one of the drivers of Bitcoin price, as it seems. So that's a bull thesis. There's plenty of bear theses as well, but I just thought I'd offer one on the other side for a balance.
Yeah.
It's also worthy to note with the schoolyard nature of tariffs, just because once you raise a tariff, like you said, Victoria, China raised theirs 37% in response to our tariff. Even if we say, okay, we'll drop it to 17, there's nothing to say that they'll immediately play along. They could play a much harder game. They could go years and years. They could drop it to 5. They could keep it at 10. Getting back to 0 or back to where we started from is not just a, turn the light switch back off type situation.
Yeah, and of
Yeah,
course,
but-
China historically has been really against foreign trade anyway. So getting them to trade at all has been quite a battle, which is probably one of the reasons why they've got such high tariffs in the first place. So yeah, and without understanding the culture, it's really difficult to organize that kind of negotiation because the cultural difference does make a difference as well.
Oh, we certainly didn't try to understand any cultures with the entire list of countries, including the place where the penguin live and so forth. Go ahead, Josh.
I mean, being China being pretty much net export, a lot of export. Like it's primarily export. Tariffs, if they put up tariffs, it's not as bad as if America does because they're a massive consumer. All they do is consume compared to make. So this balance is also why tariffs work more in favor for them. I don't think this is a long-term thing. It's like, I mean, I would rather have tariffs and zero income tax because I think income tax is pretty shit way to raise money for the state. When a tariff is good because it depends on people consuming stuff, and if you can consume stuff, it means you have money to consume stuff. So it's a much better way, a more efficient way of collecting taxes than it is with the craziness of determining someone's income and people hiding income and this and that and the other thing. So it's yeah, I mean, let's see. Interesting. It's interesting times. May you live in interesting times.
Oh, we didn't want them to be this interesting. Let's move on to the exit question. Will this be a long-term tariff situation? Will Trump drop the tariffs in a week, in a month, in 3 months, or never? Wasim, what do you say?
I think it's going to be a fairly short-term thing that we've ratcheted up the escalation, and I expect there's going to be some walking back.
Josh Shigala, short-term, long-term?
I think it's long-term depending on the countries and its negotiations. It's a massive negotiation tool, and it's going to be constantly deal-making.
Victoria Jones, short-term, long-term?
Well, the phrase that springs to mind is flatten the curve, and we all know how that panned out. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be over quickly.
I think it's going to be short-term. I think that, like Josh says, they see this as a negotiating tactic, as a first offer, and that they're going to take any concession that anyone give them. You'll give them some lawn chairs, you'll give them some, sod they found next door, whatever it is. They'll give you something, you settle the deal, we get this back on the track. And one of the interesting things I think here, if we go back in history, we say, oh, they're the N-word party and they're going to take over and all of that. We have a very different media now. Maybe not a better media, worse media, but we have so much more media that when you crash the stock market 2 days in a row, it's not that you're just crashing it in the newspaper in the morning. You're crashing it all day on the 24-hour news networks. Fox News took down their Dow Jones ticker during the president's speech when the crash started. And in the old days, I think that you could cover up that kind of information, but now I think people know. I think that it's spreading. I think that it's a big problem, and that it's like a system that's on fire. Even today, while he's golfing and enjoying himself, he's sending out angry tweets to the chairman of the Federal Reserve, asking him to suddenly cut rates and print money to save this economic situation. That's very desperate. So we'll see if he can last. But we'll be back here again next week to let you guys know if we still have these tariffs. Moving on to issue 2, Trump's crypto conflicts dominate stablecoin legislation debate. Democrats and Republicans were on the same page. They said, hey, we like stablecoins. But then President Trump launched his own stablecoin with World Liberty Financial, where all of the fees go to him. So if you didn't want to contribute illegally to President Trump through Trump Coin, You could contribute by buying a stable coin at World Liberty Financial. This has obviously upset the negotiations in Congress, where they tried to bar the president and Elon Musk and others from creating stablecoin businesses that would benefit from said legislation, and the Republicans voted down every single one of those amendments. Josh Segala, what do you think about the stablecoin legislation? Obviously, everything that Bitcoin Magazine and so forth wanted, and the problem now with people being involved in their business.
Yeah, I think as many different stablecoins as possible. The thing is that you really do want, in terms of centralized stablecoins, ones that back their currency with what's in the bank. See, the thing is, we've gone full circle. We've invented Bitcoin, decentralized, yay. Then we've used the technology to say, hey, we have some money in the bank, just like the receipts at the Rothschilds banking vault, where you put your silver and then you get some nice receipts. And then they go and say, let's just start to print receipts. You don't know. So then we go back to old school auditing, and the banks that hold the value, which is it real value? It's fiat. It is unauditable because they're legally allowed to be in fractional reserve. So then the thing that's backing it, the thing that your stable token, it's all rubbish. So this is why I'm working on the standard. This is why I think asset backed, like backing stable coins with real value, like rare numbers like Bitcoin, and arguably Ethereum, allows people to actually back their stablecoin with something that's on chain, without giving up their private keys and stuff. These are the technologies we should be heading towards, not this nonsense of, oh well, I've got a bank account and for every dollar in the bank, I'm issuing one crypto currency. It's just full circle nonsense, and we should be very, very wary of it.
This is a very exciting chance to be the first stablecoin to go completely belly up, whether from incompetence or human error. And it's from the makers of Trump University, Trump Stakes, Trump Taj Mahal. A fantastic lineage. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the stablecoin debate and the president's interests?
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea for any one form of money to be under, the umbrella of any particular family, regardless of, how hero worshipped they are or not. I think that's just a recipe for corruption. And it hasn't been individuals, but it has been governments up until now. And of course, we want Bitcoin in order to disrupt that. And so it feels like a backward step. I'm glad that people in Congress are challenging it. It may well be driven more by the politics of envy than the politics of equity. But either way, throwing a spanner in the works is probably a very good thing.
And it would have been very easy for the Republicans just to agree and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have a Trump business here or an Elon Musk business here, especially given their closeness to the legislation. Wasim, what do you think about Trump and stablecoins?
I'm reminded of The Godfather, the iconic moment in The Godfather. You come to me now on the day of my stable dollar's minting. It seems to me there's no more conflict of interest anymore since this new presidential term started. Even before that, World Liberty Financial, the Trump and the Melania meme coins. I believe they're now planning a suite of DeFi projects as well. It seems like it's open season now, and the various branches of the US government seem like asleep at the wheel. Nothing seems to be being done there. Whether you think governments are good and functional or not, they don't seem to be saying or doing very much. I've always been quite skeptical of stablecoins. Like, I wrote an article in 2019 questioning whether stablecoins would be the answer to Bitcoin's volatility, like in a bear market when the volatile assets are going down. Everyone looks to stablecoins as a safe haven, but we know that there's all of these kind of risks associated with them, whether it's where the collateral's held, as with the ongoing saga with Tether, or whether it's these kind of algorithmic bases. We saw, we had these things like there's a coin called Base that blew up. Then the same people made Terra, which I think has now entered the all-time crypto disaster Hall of Fame. And now, like, yeah, people like Josh are trying to do these things with what people in crypto now call real world assets, trying to collateralize and put, build trust in stable assets using real world stuff. I'm pretty skeptical about all of it, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that there is this massive affordance of stable coins, especially for people that don't have access to strong currencies. Like, so people that don't have access to the dollar in particular. And I've seen this described as one of the most massive potential financial arbitrage possibilities in history, that people that don't have access to USD banking can now basically use dollars, to a greater or lesser extent. And so there is something there. That's what there is, one great affordance of these things at the very least. But I'm incredibly skeptical that Donald Trump and his crime family are going to be helping anyone before they help themselves.
And it's unlikely that they're thinking of the young African child losing his money from inflation and having the stable coin on their app. But it is true that we've gone from saying, hey, everyone should have Bitcoin to everyone should have access to a stable coin. But you're right, for the developing world, it's far too risky to have access to Bitcoin. You cannot afford to go a 30% up and down swing if you're a farmer or if you're a very small businessman in another country. Still going back to this issue with the stable coins, and I'm not going to be popular with any libertarians here, this still seems like something that the United States government should offer. If Trump wants to make a stablecoin, we have this thing called the US dollar. They could make a digital US dollar. All the things that they don't like about the existing market could be replaced with an actual US dollar, where the fees, if there were any, would go to the treasury, to the upkeep, to creating this digital dollar. And yes, it could be a panopticon, but they could design it in a different way. But in general, I think that we're outsourcing things that the government could do. And if you want it, who could back it up? The government would back it up, just like the dollar. Same thing. Instead of this complex arrangement where it's in some guy's account and some guy named Tony's going to take it out the back. Go ahead,
The
Josh.
frightening thing with that is that I would rather see competition. I'd rather see USDC, USDT, all of these people creating as many stable coins as possible and let the market figure out who's trustworthy and who's not. And the market will figure that out by the price depegging if they feel that it's not trustworthy. Whereas if you have a panopticon coin that can track and trace everything, that they will inevitably build a reservoir, or build a moat around themselves, a regulatory moat, not to compete, just like anything the government does, and then monopolize that, which is not what you want. By the way, I just want to clarify with the standard, we don't have real world assets in there. We do have one token, which is Pax Gold, but we've sort of delisted it. It's mainly wrapped Bitcoin and ETH that you use. And because you can track the volatility of that, it's always got to be more. And the math just says if it drops less than the value you've borrowed, then the whole thing just gets liquidated into the market. So it's, and I think this is, I can wish as much as I want for Bitcoin to be the reserve currency and everyone use it. But when I go to conferences, everyone says, oh, I'm selling that. How much? Oh, it's $15. Oh, do you take Bitcoin? No, but I'll take stable coins. It's because people are just psychologically used to dealing in dollars and cents or rupees or euros, but flipping over to something with 18 decimal places like an Ethereum or 8 decimal places, like it's too much for people to get their head around. And even if you flip it to sats, then they have to calculate. They just don't want to. So rather than fighting the existing zeitgeist of people's comfort, the only way to get true adoption, I feel personally, and maybe I'm probably wrong, who knows, but it is to basically work with the thing that people know, but back it with Bitcoin. Yeah. Anyway, that's
just a quick note before we move on. I used to work at the Digital Currency Initiative at the MIT Media Lab, and one of the projects that was going on in the period of time that I was there was a pilot with the Boston Fed to build a prototype digital dollar system. And the architecture of that was modeled on Bitcoin. It was actually even simpler than Bitcoin. So they used a very Bitcoin-like architecture for that, and it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. Honestly, it looked a damn sight more sturdy than most of the stable coins on the market. And just to say something about sturdiness of stable coins as well, I appreciate that, we live in these marketized times, and letting the market decide is all well and good. But very often when, say, stable depegs, the people left holding the bag are the less sophisticated market participants. They might be, again, let's say global south people, or people that have less access to financial technologies and banking. So just something to bear in mind if we let ourselves be ruled by the raw Hayekian market forces.
I think it's also worth noting, like Wasim brings up, there are other stablecoin projects. There's a Fed coin that he was working on. A friend of mine was working on something at Bank of America. Facebook had their coin. All of the things learned, all of the slow academic work done in those projects will be all thrown out as they make something fly by wind or fly by the middle of the night here at World Liberty Financial. It's very sad that we never seem to recycle any of that knowledge or build on those old projects, or someone just says, hey, we're going to take the Facebook coin and we're going to stamp World Liberty on it. Instead, they're like, we're making a new thing and it's built on the Binance platform and the Ethereum platform, and it's going to be stable because Joey has the keys to the account and you can trust Joey. But I agree with you, Josh. People have a false belief that the dollar is stable, that the stock market is stable, especially as we've seen this week. That can change very quickly. And I'm reminded when you mentioned what the standard's doing with loans, back to BTC Jam, and just kind of what a bad idea BTC Jam was, because we let the people take the Bitcoin off the website. When you got the loan of like a 0.1 or whatever it was, not that much back in the day, you would take it off the site, go buy a car, do your job. You were supposed to bring the money and pay it back. All we had to do to make that a gazillion-dollar idea was not let them take it off the site. Just let them essentially take the loan to gamble with Bitcoin, that you could bet on Bitcoin or you could bet on the loan. And this way you could be in a stable coin of getting the loan back, or you could be an adventure coin of the Bitcoin. But Josh, what do you think? It's interesting. Forever ago in Jam, taking a loan
in Bitcoin is a terrible idea, because if it goes up in value like crazy, you owe back way more than any interest would ever charge. And so this is why you see on the lending markets, all of the if you're lending out Bitcoin, no one's borrowing it. So the interest you earn on Bitcoin loans is on something like Aave is tiny compared to stable coins. So if you put up your Tether to borrow, you can charge 9%. But if you put up your Bitcoin to borrow, you can charge 0.01% or something, so no one's willing to borrow Bitcoin at its raw. But to use it to collateralize with makes a lot of sense. You use the Bitcoin to collateralize and then mint a stable coin against that at 0% interest. And that's really what we've been working on at the Standard.
And it's been a long time now, but we had real world stories of that disaster, Josh. There was a kid, he might have borrowed 30 Bitcoins. It might have been 100. But the price changed. Bitcoin wasn't $10 anymore. It was $100 or it was $300. And the kid was way out of his league. He was never going to get back in. He was well-meaning. He'd make a couple grand. He'd come back and give it to these poor investors. But he's never, ever going to catch that 30 Bitcoin or that 100 Bitcoin. And this was the kind of site where you could take those kind of risks real easily. So it was a real Wild West thing back in the day. But I think how close we were if we had just not let them take the money off the site. Because like you say, you could liquidate it, you could pay off the interest, whatever. You own the capital, and we did not. So, but let's move on to the exit question, which is really more important than anything: predicting the price of Bitcoin in the future. Victoria Jones, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week?
Oh, I don't know. With the stock markets looking a bit shaky, I'm going to say lower.
Wasim El-Sindi, higher or lower?
I'm going to say higher, but I'm not sure it's going to stay higher for long.
Even a dead cat bounces. Josh Shigala, higher or lower?
Oh, that cat is going to bounce for sure.
I still think there's a possibility. We've got all these technical traders. I think we're going to talk about more in the next issue, but Yeah, I think there's still a possibility. What does the ball think? Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? And it says, it is decidedly so. It is decidedly so. The ball is optimistic. Moving on to issue 3, Bitcoin gearing up for next leg of acceleration phase. Research from Fidelity Digital Assets suggests that the Bitcoin bull market is not done yet, as the quote, acceleration cycle has yet to produce a blow off top. So it's a bit like a volcano. It's a physical item now. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the price of Bitcoin and the unproduced blow off top?
Yeah, well, reading the article, most of their argument is based on the fact that the bull market has traditionally lasted longer in the past than it has this time. But I think we are living under different conditions because, ever since 2009, especially with quantitative easing, we've just been in this situation of perpetual monetary easing. But of course, since 2022, there have been efforts being made, especially since the pandemic, to try and rein that in. And even now with the Doge initiative over in the US, and then the tariffs and the raising of interest rates, we're working in very different conditions. And and a lot of financial advisors will say that past performance is no indication of future performance. I think conditions have changed. I don't think they're going to change forever. I think eventually they're going to lose control of the situation. I don't think, if you try and create a deflation in these environments, you're going to create a huge situation, which is then going to require lowering interest rates, and then we'll be back off to the races. But until that happens, and when it does happen, there's no telling how far things could fall, because we've not been in this situation yet since Bitcoin was invented. So I think you need to be very, very careful watching what's happened in the past, because conditions have changed. And also now that we've got the ETFs, that started the bull run prematurely. And it could well be that we've finished the bull run prematurely. You just don't know. And I think, when you're dealing with such a high risk asset, you need to plan for every scenario, because Bitcoin can always surprise you.
Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Mike Tyson. Wasim Al-Sindi, what do you think of the price of Bitcoin? The Treasury Secretary says that Bitcoin's a store of value, but I never quite get to see it that way.
Well, I think Victoria's right to, give us warnings to heed. And this article from Cointelegraph, as basically everything from Cointelegraph is, I believe there's an exotic material called hopium, which crypto traders imbibe from time to time. And this appears to be grade A stash of that. What worth saying, I think the last bull cycle also ended somewhat prematurely with a bunch of exchange hacks and other kinds of catastrophes. So a lot of people have argued that actually in the last run, we didn't have a blow off top. So I would say that there's no, it's not some kind of foretold destiny that we get a blow off top. Bitcoin goes 6x from here, and we all meet each other on the beach in Barbados. I think it could be mostly bad news from now, and when the bad news starts, it can be several years of bad news. So I would advise people to be wary of these kinds of bull posts from people that, let's face it, they have a reason to kind of talk the market up. These are people that are making fees on transactions and on custody of these assets. And so, of course, people at Fidelity Digital Assets want you to think that it's a good time to buy some more Bitcoin. But it's always a good idea to buy Bitcoin, but you've got to be careful when you do it.
Josh Shigala, we see mostly negativity from the panel here. What do you say?
Don't look scared,
Positive.
Josh.
Positive all the way. I think it's great. I think everything that's happening is fantastic. It needs to happen. I'm loving Doge. I think it's just fantastic. Cut all that stuff out. Really getting someone in there with a glass, just cutting it all as much as you can. If you make some fuck ups, which you will, just like in any company, put it together. There's some just such normal, sensical things, like if you're going to spend money within the state, you have to put a line item in and say what the hell it is and where it's going and who's it for and what it's for and which budget it's coming from. And that has to go into the payment system. And that way you can track this stuff. It's crazy that the state is allowed to just spend as much as it wants without anything. So without any sort of oversight at all. It's just, I don't know, there's $500 billion missing. We literally cannot trace it. Cannot trace it. It's just open for corruption. It's just so bad. It's so bad. So it's really good, and it inspires the rest of the world. So I'm really glad it's happening, and I hope that it inspires Australia, that it inspires Europe to get in there. Because any big corporation, you see this big corporations as well, they become so big that it becomes hard to track. And there's all these computer licenses that you didn't know you needed, software licenses, things. It just becomes overly common. You saw it with Twitter before Elon took it over. It was just bloated, way too many employees, and just bloat. So for the American taxpayer, I think it's a huge, huge win to have this time to reset. And, you know, there'll be mistakes, but hopefully they'll be corrected quickly.
Well, we'll see. The current studies show them not saving much. And remember, if they do save anything, they're going to give it all back into the billionaires tax cut, which they've got coming up. As far as the price of Bitcoin, I'm still kind of with this guy. I mean, it's like Aziz, like Wasim said, it's hopium. Like, it's ridiculous at this point. But there is a possibility that Bitcoin and crypto exist outside of the normal market, and that they're able to rally through this, maybe through the large buys, Michael Saylor and others buying Bitcoin, buying your Bitcoin when you sell it, and all of that. Maybe they see Bitcoin as the safe haven asset that we always thought it was. Maybe this is the time. This is the time that happens. Anyway, let's keep moving. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com, where we've got 4,271 videos that you could watch for more than 3 months, 21 days, and 11 hours straight. That's a long time. At worldcryptonetwork.com. Issue 4, Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Officers are accused of stealing $21 million in crypto while investigating a corruption case. What do you think, Victoria Jones, about the Revolutionary Guard perhaps dipping into the funds during a crime case?
Shock horror, who would ever believe it? I mean, I think on this show many times we've talked about one of the problems of corporations and governments, you know, using Bitcoin. It's just like, who holds the keys? How do you manage the keys? Even if you use multi-sig, who do you give responsibility of it to? So yeah, and this is you know, one of the features of decentralized currency, and that's one of the reasons why it will change the world. You know, all of these dynamics are going to be disrupted, and situations like this will prompt that.
It does seem incredibly unfortunate. They had this Iranian exchange. They were doing well. They got investigated, and then allegedly these guys investigating them took the money. Wasim, what do you think about the same old story, but this time with the Revolutionary Guard? Sounds like a dangerous people to rob.
Well, we've always said that cryptocurrency is a monetary revolution, and so perhaps we found the product market fit now with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, because they sound like they should be revolutionary if you believe their names and the title in their institution. I mean, one of the financial realities of Iran is that because of all of the sanctions that have been placed on it, primarily by the US, but also by other parts of the international community, the country is an economic basket case with inflation, like high inflation, devaluing currency, capital controls, difficult to get things in and out of the country. And so things like cryptocurrencies, even if you don't think they're useful for anything else, as like many of them are not, they're very, very good for getting in and out of borders and disappearing around the nooks and crannies. So I'm not surprised to see cryptocurrency being used like by the government or by various parts of the organs of state, but also that people that work within it, they're subject to the principal agent problem. Like, what they want is not necessarily what's good for their employer or the government, and people take matters and private keys into their own hands. And we've seen it before, and doubtless we'll be on here again sometime discussing it again.
There's a great scene in the movie Yes Man where Jim Carrey's talking to the bank president, And the bank president says calmly, as if it was something that everyone knew and everyone accepted, he says, I would rob this place blind if I could. Why wouldn't you? And it's just this kind of negative attitude where everyone is out to get everyone. And that gets so much worse when you can steal these little digital keys and scoop them up and take millions of dollars instantly. You don't have to have a vault full of gold. It's not three kings. They're not stealing anything heavy here. Josh Shigala, what do you think about the Iranian National Guard and the potentially lost 21 million?
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem that we've been talking about on this show for a very long time with governments holding Bitcoin, is that potentially the government that is in power could use the funds to basically hold the country at ransom, or run off with it. You can, like you always say, Thomas, you can fit a hell of a lot of money of Bitcoin into a briefcase. And so this is the thing. Bitcoin is already very, very hard to secure amongst a few people. You can have a multi-sig, sure, but in a government situation where you have a lot of parties, and a lot of parties that have zero knowledge or technical knowledge, and then you have like a few that have a very strong technical knowledge, you're probably going to get screwed over by the people that have strong technical knowledge or that have strong armaments and money to pay the people that have a strong technical knowledge. So it's not the best. I think still for governments, gold is still a much better source of holding a store of value, because it's very, very difficult to move large amounts of gold. But yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely an interesting first look at this stuff.
It's also a great story because where it comes from, because sure, we've had law offices and public defenders and things like that have allegedly ran off with the Bitcoin, but now we have the military, the Iranian Republican Guard, something you can trust, but it harkens back to Catch-22 with Milo Minderbender and how he was ripping everyone off and running the entire government, and basically through the military there, all the little transactions. And it's interesting what they can get away with, and no one can be trusted with $21 million of Bitcoin sitting in front of them on the desk. So we'll see if the World Liberty Financial and others can stand up to this temptation. Moving on to issue 5, Bitcoin is a currency. As we've been saying on this show hundreds of times, but apparently it only matters if we say it in a fancy office in the Presidio in San Francisco, where a nice girl asked Jack Dorsey to try to talk through his beard, and he almost manages it, explaining that Bitcoin will become irrelevant if it's only a store of value and not used for payments. As the article says, BlackRock CEO says Bitcoin could reduce the dominance of the dollar. Like we always say, the Bitcoin is in direct competition with the dollar. They've taken the Trojan horse inside the walls. Wasim Al-Sindi, what do you think about the incredible wise words of Jack Dorsey, who just discovered Bitcoin yesterday and wants it to be a currency?
Well, that's not fair, Thomas, and you know it. Jack Dorsey found Bitcoin a little bit longer ago, and he's been a funder of various ecosystem concerns, as I believe there's a thing called Block, which he started. Not to say that I'm some kind of like massive supporter or fanboy, but just want to, for balance, add some facts into the mix. And I think he has a point. And this is a point that we've, you and everyone else on this show have been laboring for a decade now, that, we know that Bitcoin has this store of value quality, but without transactions happening on the chain. And by the way, the blocks are pretty empty at the moment. People are raising concern about this. The security model of Bitcoin is such, and we all know this, that every 4 years or so, the number of Bitcoins going to a miner for finding the winning block divides by 2. And the idea is that either the price of Bitcoin keeps going up to incentivize all the miners, like the ones behind me, to keep mining, or the transaction fees increase to kind of up that bribe to keep Bitcoin secure. And like one of the primary failure modes, like that's from in economic in nature, is that people don't use this stuff enough, and then the network isn't no longer has that security, and people lose faith in it, and then that would have understandable consequences of the price. So I think he's making a good point. Well, he's trying to make a good point, but as you say, his beard keeps getting stuck in his mouth. I hope he doesn't try to ride a bike with a beard that long. That could get nasty.
And with the sandals, he couldn't do it with the sandals. But you're right, we do see MicroStrategy and other large corporations just buying Bitcoin and holding it. This vault strategy where it never moves around, never becomes part of the ecosystem. That was never part of the plan before. Sure, it looks good on paper, but never part of the plan. Josh Segala, what do you think about Jack Dorsey? He's here to rescue us from Bitcoin.
Well, I've always been a big fan of moving Bitcoin to my detriment. Moving Bitcoin in the early days, I paid for everything. If I look back at it now, I'd be a billionaire. But instead, I'm not. So I should have done the HODL thing. Instead, I was like, no, we got to make the move. This is currency. This is the currency of the future. Nevertheless, it does. Yeah, I think that we do have problems, Wasim. I think it is a problem, and it's always been a problem with me that the Lightning Network is the answer L2. There has to be some L2s, but the fact of the matter is that the L1 needs transactions, and because eventually the block reward is going to well, not run out, but become so small that it's not worth it. I mean, saying that, we have an absolutely astronomically, ridiculously huge hash rate. Like most people cannot grasp the number that is happening per second. Like it's so nuts. It's so nuts. It's equivalent to like every grain of sand on Earth times every grain of sand on Earth is being hashed every second or something. Like it's just nuts right now. So I think the network security is good.
For now,
it's so good for now that it can even come down by half and still be good. But yeah, it's a problem. It's definitely a problem that should be. I mean, it's not like we haven't talked about it ad nauseum through the block size debate, but it's not been resolved. It's still an issue. So I would like to see it being used more, and hence, I like using Bitcoin, but I think if you are going to go with a HODL strategy, you should use it to back a currency that you do use that's still decentralized. Again, that's why I'm working on the standard, even though that's a wrapped Bitcoin on the Ethereum chain. It would be good if I had the op return codes on Bitcoin to build what I've built on Bitcoin, but it's unfortunately not there.
And it almost sounds impossible, but back when I was working at Purse.io, we would encourage people to spend the Bitcoin, then rebuy the Bitcoin. So you could have $300, you could spend it, you could put another $300 back in. It's amazing technology. But you could try that too. But no one ever does it. They spend the 300 and then they just forget about it for 5 years, and then they're all mad at you that they spent the 300. They're like, you should have told me to keep that. Victoria,
I'm still mad at you, Thomas.
There are so many. What do you think about the dominance of Bitcoin and if it should be a currency or not? Something like Josh said, we cover all the time.
Yeah, absolutely needs to be a currency. It was when Churchill made the first law to prevent gold being in circulation, that the beginning of the unfairness to the average person by gold not circulating as a currency anymore first began. So, the whole point of Bitcoin is getting it back to the stage where it's a currency that everybody uses, because it's not going to fulfill its destiny until it does. But at the same time, I think we're still in the early stages with Bitcoin. It's still developing its properties as a money. I don't think we're going to stay in this situation forever. It's all part of Bitcoin's life cycle. And I think by the time we do need transactions on the blockchain in order to support it, the world will be very different then. And, there's still plenty of time for all of these fiat currencies to collapse, at which point that will be the point at which everyone starts to realize why they need to have Bitcoin as a currency. It's just a really difficult thing for people to get their heads around right now. And also, very powerful players, it's in their interest to try and disrupt what Bitcoin is used for, hence the store of value narrative. It definitely suits people who want to maintain power, even by using Bitcoin to support the US dollar rather than using it as a currency, is feeding into that narrative, which is not what Bitcoin was invented for, or the way in which it can actually end up helping the average person. But at the same time, I think it will get there eventually. It's just we've got a long way to go.
Just to say something about L2s as well, because they came up in the conversation. And Lightning Network is an example of one particular type of L2. But there's a lot of people now trying to do, let's say, more like Ethereum-like L2s that will work with Bitcoin. And there's been a bit of a reckoning in the Ethereum community recently about the mess that has been caused to the state of L1 Ethereum, like the native Ethereum chain, which is basically also a ghost town these days, with very low transaction fees. And so we should be careful what we wish for on Bitcoin. Be very careful about how we design L2s and other off-chain stuff, so that it doesn't kind of cannibalize the security budget of the native chain from which all the security arises.
Yeah, very good point. And we do need L2s. Like, it's crazy to think that everything can be done on L1s. And the thing is that if you have it cheap enough for everything to be on L1, then you'll get everything. You'll get spell checkers. You'll get everything being put on L1, which will bloat the system so much because humans have an infinite appetite for block space. And so it makes no sense to put everything on L1 either, not at all, because either it's going to be nefariously just used for lols to destroy the network, or it'll cost a lot, so those lols can't do it. So it's either one of those. And so by having L2s out there, but yeah, you're right, to architect those L2s to make sure that they constantly chain back or peg their security onto the L1 to feed fees back down the chain is super important. And yeah, let's see.
Yeah, there's the conversation in the Ethereum network is now asking major L2s to pay kind of like a tax, like a retroactively installed tax, to kind of bolster the base chain. And that doesn't seem very kind of in accordance with the principles that I think Bitcoin was created under. So I think these are conversations that are best had when these systems are being designed and implemented rather than later.
Well, that might be the only way for it to survive, that it needs to pay that to support the original chain. If you look at the popularity of Dogecoin versus the popularity of Litecoin, Litecoin might be in trouble, yet as far as I know, they still provide the technical underpinnings for the Dogecoin network. So they need to support the chain. And it's interesting, a lot of the things we've been focusing on here are maybe trying to create a proper consumer environment for Bitcoin. I know that BitGo, when they did the BitGo Bowl a long time ago, they gave out little terminals to restaurants, and they went all around the neighborhood. And then they didn't go all around the neighborhood with customers. They couldn't get any customers to go there. And maybe the key for Bitcoin is that for it to be truly cool and for people to be kind of forced to use it, it has to be illegal. Maybe we need an Orwellian state for Bitcoin to flourish. And what we really need to do is contribute to the Orwellian state, because that will lead Bitcoin to be illegal, forcing people to use it. Victoria Jones, does Bitcoin need to be illegal?
I don't think it's possible to make it illegal, because laws by their very nature are made by individual countries, and the moment you go to a different country and they make a different set of laws, it's it becomes a nonsense. So they can try, but good luck with that.
It doesn't have to be effectively illegal. You just have to ban it and scare people, like Levi's jeans or marijuana.
Prohibition for Bitcoin.
Yeah, it is illegal in a lot of countries, though, Thomas. I went to the big Ethereum conference a few months ago, not entirely of my own volition. And in Thailand, making peer-to-peer transactions is illegal. I spent a bunch of time in Egypt this winter, and everything is totally banned there. So governments will try, but like the people are wise. And there's a saying in China, or at least a kind of a way of thinking in China, that if the government bans something, the people there know that's because it's good for them. And that's why the government doesn't want them to have it. So you kind of have that sort of Streisand effect potential there as well. So I say, yeah, bring it on. If governments want to try and ban it, that's probably just fuel on the fire.
And that's why, again, this is going to be successful. We're using reverse psychology. We're saying we want this to happen. Ban us so we can be more popular. Josh Shigala, does Bitcoin need to be illegal?
Oh yeah, and the other saying in China is the land is vast and the emperor is far away. Yeah, I mean, I mean, it was designed to work illegally. The reason why Satoshi was anonymous because it was extremely dangerous, and there was precedent of private currencies and the owners of the private currencies being put in the slammer for launching these things. So you are going up against not only world banks, you're going up against the mafia industrial complex of governments, you're going up against oil, big oil, because it's a petrodollar. You're going up against so much when you're creating private currency. So it was designed to be working in the black. So I guess this is the thesis behind what's our mate, the anarchist from OG, right back, black money, dark money. He's fallen off my. Yeah, Miyazaki. And that's what Miyazaki is all about, right? Is it needs to be illegal for it to work, and then you will get an actual base that uses it properly, not just holds it, sells it on Coinbase and pays their rent. They actually use it and find a rental agreement that will accept Bitcoin.
Well, see, and the problem is he came at it from the revolutionary angle with the black suit and the black hat and all that. He should have just come in the suit and tie and said, hey, we're here to make Bitcoin illegal. Like, join us. And he would have had tons of support. Spoiler alert, we don't have to advocate for Bitcoin to be illegal. It will be illegal soon enough. Oh, it's a spoiler. But we've got a couple more stories here, just really briefly. Sam Bankman-Fried has been banished to Oklahoma, no longer on the same cell block as P. Diddy Combs. Sam Bankman-Fried gave an illegal interview with Tucker Carlson, perhaps as his plan to become a Republican, as his leaked document said. In the interview, he said what everyone has known and we've talked about many times, that he gave money to the Republicans and the Democrats. But more importantly, this is about the pardon. SBF is attempting to get the Ross Ulbricht pardon from Trump. Will he get it? Wasim Al-Sindi, will SBF get the pardon?
I don't think he's going to get the Ross treatment. I mean, not least because there was the enormous Free Ross Day One campaign. And, you know, to be fair, it was day two, I think, or like one of the early days of Trump's presidency, but he did make good on one of his promises at least. I don't think there's the same kind of sentiment, at least in the Republican Party, like either the MAGA or the kind of GOP factions of it, for someone like SBF who was really playing the Democrat game. Like, you know, he was kind of intergenerational Democrat family, giving money to all the Dems and propping up the Blue Party. And so I think he might be on the wrong side of history here. And whereas I don't know the ins and outs of the story as to why he's been moved per se, I feel like this administration is not going to be as kind to him as it was to Ross Ulbricht.
Josh Shigala, SBF's got lots of money. He's got really nice parents. They used to be professors. Can he get a pardon?
No, Wasim is absolutely correct. Well, Ross Ulbricht, it was a 10-year, whatever it was, effort by a lot of people to put pressure on, specifically his mum has been working tirelessly. And Ross is also very different. He built allegedly built a site that worked for free trade. He also had rules about that site. There was issues. We all know the stories. But this guy created an exchange and basically was fraudulent in his business practices, and that's just what it is. So it's a very different case. And Trump, all of the promises he's made so far, he's kept. I haven't seen any that he hasn't. But there's never been one mention of Ross Ulbricht in this whole campaign. Not Ross Ulbricht, of Sam Bankman-Fried. So yeah, and I had good word from his mum, from Ross's mum back in the day, that Trump was very close to pardoning him last time. It's just right at the end there with the way that the election turned out. He was not as focused on all the pardoning stuff that usually a president does at the end of their terms, and dropped it. But yeah, it was. I'm glad he pardoned Ross, and good to see him out and about and enjoying nature.
They did create very different websites, with Ross allegedly building the Silk Road, which of course proved the drug war is ridiculous. Sam built SBF or FTX, where he was able to just dip into the piggy bank and buy whatever he wants. If he wants to get Tom Brady in an advertisement, he just takes some of Wasim's money and some of Victoria's money and some of Josh's money and puts it all together and buys the advertisement. Kind of revolutionary in its own way. But remember, Trump doesn't really care about Ross Ulbricht. He doesn't think the drug war is over. He doesn't think that he was some kind of a purpose or a principled stand, a libertarian leader out there on his principles, rejecting a bad law. In the same way, I don't think that Trump cares that SBF ripped off all those people and took their money. Maybe if they could get the bribes to the right place, they could get this pardon through. Victoria Jones, what do you think? A pardon for SBF?
Well, it made sense for Trump to pardon Ross because there was so much support behind him. And that's ultimately what politics are all about. It's a popularity contest. And there was so much unwavering support for Ross, and such a sense of unfairness, because people felt that, he was exploring a new technology in order to help people. Because even though, many people believe drugs are bad and they can have negative consequences, by creating the website he actually made some of those transactions safer. And so in many respects, although there were issues, the overall effect of what he was doing was positive. And so people had a lot of positive feelings towards Ross, and hence the political support, whereas Sam Bankman-Fried just betrayed everybody. And in that situation, he has no friends. And if you have no friends, it's lonely in political life. And you can try and buy your friends, but people see through that very quickly. And of course, if the political landscape changes, there's no substance when it all falls apart. So yeah, there's no way Sam Bankman-Fried is getting the same treatment as Ross Ulbricht.
Poor Sam, he has no friends. And we have just one more quick story to cover. We often talk about the Smithsonian museums, the great museums of the United States, and how one day they dreamed that there would be 50 museums in 50 states. You wouldn't have to go all the way to Washington, D.C. You could have a Smithsonian right there in Iowa, right nearby you. But that's not what we're reporting on today. Unfortunately, despite seizing the crypto funding, they're not using the crypto funding to expand the Smithsonian to 50 states. They're just going to crack down on the Smithsonians and rewrite history. As it says in the Guardian newspaper, it reminds you of a fascist state. The Smithsonian Institution braces for Trump's rewrite of U.S. history. Normally staid historians sound the alarm at authoritarians grasping for control of the premier U.S. museum complex. And in the United States, we don't have an official history. We don't have an official story. And this has led to kind of two versions of history, one of with the founding fathers chopping down the cherry tree and being very, holier than now and all that. And another version of history where we talk about what really happened with slavery And it seems that we're not going to talk about that history anymore. The Trump administration has taken over the Kennedy Center, the Smithsonian, and they're eliminating the Museum and Library Studies Commission, which is really disappointing. They don't do much. They manage museums and libraries, and we're not going to have them anymore. So that's that for that. No, we don't get 50 states, 50 Smithsonians, but I continue to campaign for it. We're running out of time, but let's go to predictions or story of the week. Wasim El-Sindi, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
I'm just going to go with that story so I can have my say about it, which is, so I went to Rhodes, the Greek island, which was one of the last homes of the crusading Knights of Rhodes, not Knights Hospitaller. And the palace there in the capital town of the island got reconstructed by the Italians when they were in possession of those territories in the early stages of Italian fascism. And they remade that history, and they Italianized it. So we went to this palace not realizing what was going to happen, and it was full of just like random shit like Ming vases, nothing to do with the actual history of the place. So it's very dangerous when fascists or people that are like leaning towards those tendencies attempt to rewrite history for their own ends and for their own glories. So don't do that.
I completely agree. Let's go to Josh Shigala. Do you have a prediction or a story of the week? What are you guys working on over at the Standard there?
So with the Standard, you lock up funds into a smart contract. The smart contract has rules that you control because you control your private key. And there's a rule that if the stablecoin drops below a certain price, like down to 98 cents, the smart contract will look for the highest leveraged vault and basically get the collateral to pay off its, like buy the stablecoin, burn them, so that buying pressure lifts the price again, and sell the underlying asset that's backing that. And the thing is, we didn't want centralized servers doing that, so we partnered with Chainlink, and Chainlink have a really interesting technology called automations, and automations use a whole bunch of nodes to determine something's happening and then trigger smart contracts to do whatever they need to do. So our partnership with Chainlink set off. We've launched our automation, so no centralized party looks at the price. It's an Oracle system of a whole bunch of nodes, thousands of different nodes, or hundreds at least. And it's a really interesting technology. I think it's fascinating. So we launched that, and now that's totally hands-free as well. So it's really great if ever and there's always mathematically more collateral locked up inside the smart vaults than there are stablecoins. So we are in unfractional reserve, and it's mathematically provable, and everyone still holds their private key, so no one can touch their collateral. And so interesting stuff. Loving building cool shit.
See, and that's what these systems should be like. They're built over a long amount of time with trial and error and thought and different ideas. We don't just knock one out in a few days. It's good work, Josh, at thestandard.io. And Victoria Jones, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Yes, well, as mentioned earlier, I'm unexpectedly working on a newsletter called Bitcoin and Free Trade, which I'm hoping to publish on Sunday. So if you're interested in that, check that out at my website, satoshispage.com.
All right, very cool, very timely for that article. And we're going to continue talking about movies and books at the end of the show. It's a nice time for me to share stuff. Obviously, this week we lost Val Kilmer at 65. He was a great actor in Top Gun, Batman Forever, The Doors, so many other movies. Let's go to Josh. Josh, what do you think about Val Kilmer? Obviously, we lost Gene Hackman, David Lynch. Val Kilmer has been bad for movies lately.
Yeah, good actor. I don't know. I'm not really a movie guy as such. Like, I like certain movies, don't get me wrong, and I like, but the personal lives of actors, I'm not really that. I don't know that many. So, but yeah, Val Kilmer. I liked Batman, the original one. That was cool.
It is strange we see them so much in the movies, but we don't know them at all in real life. And it's
Yeah.
interesting how the image is left behind. Val Kilmer clearly gone, but 100 memes on my Twitter, everyone with the video, it seems like he's still around. So it's very interesting the way that the image lasts.
Especially with AI, you can sort of respawn them, their image anyway.
Well, and it's morbid. I didn't get around to creating the prompts, but I thought to myself, boy, Val Kilmer and Gene Hackman in a David Lynch film. I would watch that. But maybe soon they'll be able to create one with AI and not with like 1,000 different prompts like I'd have to. But I finished a bunch of books this week. Check out Yes Man. I read the book behind the movie. It's in a lot of ways different and better. It's based in London, not Los Angeles, so much like High Fidelity. They moved it across the pond, but it's just as fun as the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, check out the movie Yes Man, and then check out the book. I also finally finished The Last Ronin, the end of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's incredibly heavy. If you want to read a big, heavy graphic novel about the Ninja Turtles, check that out. I finished The Kid Stays in the Picture. I'd watched the movie years ago, but finally got to the audiobook of Robert Evans reading his story himself about Paramount Pictures in the 70s, producing The Godfather. And so far, there's been 3 episodes of the great Seth Rogen new show, The Studio, and all 3 have had a Bob Evans reference in them. Good on Seth Rogen. I read How the South Won the Civil War. It's pretty heavy and hard to take, but important in these days. And finally, Starter Villain by John Scalzi about cats who can talk. And there's a lot of trouble there. So just some quick books for you guys to check out and movies. Give us a thumbs up down below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll be back again next week. So until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.